Being able to track all of your finances for a small to medium business that have all in one place is incredible valuable. Well, that's exactly what we are going to covering in this video. I am going to show you how to set up building your own invoice from within Coda. In this video, we divide it into three parts. First, we understand and structure our Coda database. Then we go to the document to create the invoice template. And in the third part, we connect our Coda data to the document to send the data and make an invoice. So let's start with developing structure of our database. Now when we create an invoice, it's always sent to someone an entity. Now sometime we might break this into two different tables. We might have contacts who relate to companies. For example, you might be doing business with company XYZ and you have multiple points of contact at the company. But you only send invoice to one particular person. So if that's the structure of your business, you will want to break this into two things, companies and contacts. But it might not be the case. Maybe you work with more of a B2C model, business to consumer, in which case you will have to just one table and it will be the one person the invoice is going to. But in this case, we are going with which include both the people as well as the companies as they work for. So let's check that out. So first we are going to delete all our previous database and start everything from scratch. So first we need the contacts of the company. So let's create a new table. It's db contact, and for this we need the first name of the person, the last name, we need the email ID of that person, and change the column type is email, and let's say we need one thing is phone number too, and this is the first column, so we can use Coda formula to get the full name. It's a good practice to separate each entity in a different table like we do with first name and last name. So we use concatenate formula. It combines two value into one place. So we choose the first name and we want to get some space there, and we want last name. So let's start with some data fill. Steve Smith, and you see it's get the full name. Let's write the email, and the number. Take one more example is saying the email is, and write a number. Now we have the contacts. Let's create another table for companies, and we take another table is TB company. So in this company we have the field is company name. So let's write with consulting, and we need, so each company have a different point of contact, so we need to connect this company to the contact table. So we can select is contacts, and we choose to relate with our DB contacts. And now we have, here is option for allow multiple selections, and we allow this multiple selection because each companies have a different point of contact. So let's select two people here, and now when we send the invoice, so we send the invoice for the one person who is responsible for the invoice, like financial manager. So we choose billing contact, who is responsible for uh, the invoice work. So in this case we also connect this with our relationship db contact, but now we don't allow the multiple selections because we just want to send to the one person. So let's say Steve is one who is responsible for it, so we just allow for one selection for this. So now we set up our contact table and companies table. Now for the invoice we need to create the line items. So let's create a new table, is db line item, and for this we need the line item ID, and second thing we need is the line item connected to the service. So let's use another column is service, and now service have a different cost. So let's create a new table first, dv service, and then we connect this with our line items. Each line item have a one service. So let's connect this with db service, and we don't allow multiple selection because each line item has only one service. And let's fill some data here. It's service 1, service 2, service 3, and the amount of this service, and of course this is a currency, and we don't need these two columns here, so delete this. Let's say we have one service for $1,000, it's for $2,000, and this is for $3,000. So let's select service 1 for service 2 for service 3. Now we have the line items and the service. Now we need to create our final table, and this is the main junction table which bring all the data together, like companies and the line item service. So we create db invoice, and this is id invoice id, and this is connected with our line items. So we create a invoice id. Let's use concatenate formula and use any random number, like let's say 0069, and the other thing we create is a different variable for different invoice id. So we use this row, so we choose the row id to add last variable in the invoice id. So we choose the row id and this row, so 691 692. So every time we get the different invoice id, and the line items, this item is connected to our this line item ids. So link it with, and here we allow the multiple selection because each invoice have a different line items. And now we need to connect all data to this table to make it all sense. So we create an invoice for this line item for this company. So we choose the company and relate to our db company, and we don't allow multiple selection because we send one invoice to the one company. So we send this invoice id for this line items for this company, and we see each company has a billing contact who is responsible for the invoice. So we need to create a one column here for the billing contact. So we go to the company and we see the related columns. So company have a billing contact in the contract, and we want to send the invoice for the particular billing contact, so we add one more column is billing contact here. So if we select our company's Wade Consulting, so we can see the Steve Smith is responsible for billing contact. Here we see the Wade Consulting, and he is the person who is this one. If we change this, it's change it here. Okay, so we can relate it here. And now the each billing contact has a different email ID, so we send the invoice for the particular email ID. So we can grab this email ID from this table and add related column. We grab this person email ID here, we can rename it for understanding billing email. Okay, so now it's make all sense. We send this invoice ID with all these line items for this company, for this contact, for this billing email. So the one thing we are here, it's connect this line items with our invoice table. So let's connect this to DB invoice. So we have already, we don't allow multiple selection here, you can allow it. So you can select this invoice, and for this one we can select a different invoice. This is line item ID, so again we use concatenate. So it makes sense, is invoice. So we want text value to text value, and we want some space here, so we add this, and we want the service dot to text. It's convert any value into text field. So we have the different line items ID here connected with this service. So delete this. So you can see it's all updated here. If we make a change here, it also change it here. So we have this 691 692. Let's, if we change 692 here, it's updated here too. So now we have these line items ID for this service, and we for this particular invoice. So each service have different cost, so let's get the cost value here for these different services. So related column, we need the amount here, and here we change this to cost, mean that bring here this service for this invoice, and we charge this. And let's another column is a quantity. So how many times we provide this service to the client, so we can change this to number, like we provide this service for 3 times, this is 2 times, and this is only 1 time. So now we have the service, the connected invoice ID, then cost, and the quantity. So now we need the one more thing is here is the subtotal for this particular line item. So we add a currency column, and this should be subtotal. So for you this we can use simple formula to cost multiply with a quantity. So we get the subtotal for this particular line items. When we structure our database, we need to understand how we align every columns in a particular order, so it's make all sense. So we can see we provide this line item for this particular service related to this particular invoice with the cost, quantity, and the subtotal for these items. And when we see here, it all updated here. We need one thing is the total amount for these two line items, like we have the connect these two items with this particular invoice. and this invoice is $3,000, this is $4,000. But for the in this particular invoice we need to create the total value of these two line items. So let's go to this value and related column, and we want to the subtotal. So that's how you can understand. First we go to the line items and we go to the related column, and we have the different related items, but we go to the subtotal because we want the total value. So we get the values, but we want the sum of these two line items. So we select the sum and we select is total amount, and there we get the total amount for this particular invoice. So when you read this table, you see we have this invoice ID, charge for these two line item with their service, for this company, for invoice sent to this person at this email address, and the total amount is this. So now we complete our old database, and then we need to go for our document to design the invoice template. So now we are in the document part. I already create this template because if we build from scratch it takes too much time and video gets too long. So it's a document editor. It's a simple drag and drop. You can create any layout with these columns and rows value, and you can easily put any variable, any content from this part. Like if you want to create this column here, and you can text here, you can image here like this, and if you write something here, you can go to the properties, you can change the spacing, you can change the format of the text, you can change the color of the text, you can change the size of the text. There is number of things, it's too low. Okay, so you can change alignment, casing, anything you like to do with these properties. You can make adjustment based on your need and change. Now we don't need anything, so we can delete everything from there. So this is a design part. You can make adjustment based on your needs. The main thing is here is two things. First is this variables. So we use these variables to get the data from Coda. We simply create a new variable, write a variable like due date. You can click this, create this variable, copy this link, and you can place it anywhere. So when we get the data is stored in the same place, in the same format, in same styling. So you can simply create these variables: invoice number, the due date, the client name, email, and total. And the second thing is a looping. Let me explain these two. So when you see this is in data, and when you go to the layer part, you can see the different layers we have. This is a one row. We have two columns, 1 and 2, and we can different rows here. The header is constant. This is the row we can see. So here we use this layout for 4 columns, 1 2 3 4. You can expand it, you can see it all columns, you can make adjustment the column. So these are the 4 columns which are constant, and this is the header we use for the variables, because when we send the line items to document, it vary the number of items we get. Like we get 3 line items, sometimes we get 5 line items, so we don't have control on it. So for this we need to create a looping. It simply means, let me get there. So we can select this header variables, and we want to loop all these 4 columns, not just a single column. So we select the whole row, get to the edit logic, get to the repeat loop, and here is already create a new variable is line items. So you need to create a new variables. Here is don't need to add curly bracket. So it simply means when you see this line item, repeat the element for each time. Okay, so it's save here, and this is footer part. So whenever we send the data from Coda to this document, and whenever we see the line item, it get repeat itself. So this is the design part, and here we can see the test data, and let me explain how it works. So here is put anything like data. You can see we have the five columns here, five fields here, and this is the line items. You can see the four things already there, and if we add one time more, so we can like this, you can see quantity, you can cost is to this, and subtotal is like any number. Right now you can preview this document and you can see it how your invoice look when you finally created from Coda data. So you can see here the all things are here, and these are things we look at, and these are the main things we need to look at it. So you can see we have two line items, we have one and two line item for each values, and we get the value. So how many number of line items you provided, it repeat itself. So this is all about document, and let's move to the Coda to send the data from Coda to document. And in Coda we directly don't send the whole table to the document, because document need a special formatting to Coda to send data from Coda to document. So let's create a new table to format our data in a manner so we can easily send our data to document to generate the invoice. So let's create a new table. It's called db payload, and this is the trick I learned from the the Coda guy. So we need is to create a new table is db payload, and when we see the data part, we see the variables are in two parts. This is the top layer, and the line items have the different four variables inside it. So we create the two parts and to send the data in a different way. So we select top level, we have five variables, and this is the line item. Okay, so we use this notes column, and here we use code block. So we need to write the data in a JSON format. I already write here to save our time. We have this number of fields like if number, invoice number, due date, client name, client email, total, and this line items. So I created this JSON, so we need to write in this same format with a semicolon. So all the values with a comma in the end, and we use the line items as an array, because it adds an array. We have the four values there, so we use write in this array format, and here we don't need to write semicolon, write a column here. So we just simply copy it and paste in our top level view. You can see here, and the same for the line items. We have the descending description, quantity, and the cost and subtotal. So we just copy it here and paste it here. So now we have the formatted data in a JSON. So write it formatted. Here we need one more thing to avoid any JSON to send. Here we need to avoid any line break from our formatted data. So we go to the formatted data, use rejects replace, and write this exact same rejects to avoid any line breaking or anything, to make it flatten and it look more nicer here. Okay, so we write like this slash n bar slash r bar slash s and it will replace with blank value. So we get this data, plain data, without any line break. Now we write a part for both the levels of JSON. Now we need to write this data in this format to send in document. So let's first go to these DB line items, add a new text column, and it's write JSON. So here we use the Coda formula is format, and here I explain how why we use these numbers 1 2 3 4 5 different for different options. Like expand this, we use this format. So first we need to get the template. We use @ and call the particular row of the line item, and we don't want the row, we want JSON to send. So we call this particular row with this data. So we get this data. Now we get the here we have the template, like description is 1. So in the first part of description I like to add line item IT. So we get the description is 006 service 1. It's the line item ID in the description, will give its value. Now quantity is the key, and we need to write its value. So it's quantity. So now we get the 3 is a quantity here. Now add other two like cost and subtotal. So we add all these 4 values here, and we all go. So we write line items. Now we need to add JSON for this main table of invoice. So JSON, and in this table we use format and call the top label with JSON to send. So now we need to write and fill the template. So first thing we see here is invoice number is 1. So we get the invoice ID, this the client name. So we can select billing contact. We don't want to send the link, we want to contact, so we can use the full name. Then we need billing email, and we want to convert in a text format. Then we need total amount, then due date. So here we need to create a due date. Now we don't have a due date, so let's create a due date too. So we need to create in a due date. We can here add here. So it's a date, due date, and change the type of column is date. So now we have the due date like 4/2. Okay, so we open the bar, we provide the due date like this, and you see here we get the due date. The last thing we need the line items. So we select line items, but we don't want to send the list of rows of line items, so we need to combine all the line items with the Coda formula, like we used to join them all with a comma. So you can see here, now we have all those things in a one place. So we have this big JSON to send our data to the document. Now it need a final part to go to the settings, search for document. I already installed the pack. You need to install this pack here, and we need to create a button here to send this JSON to our document. So this button, we can see the document pack here, and we want to create a PDF view button. So we take this button here, and once we have this button, it asks for packs document, and we want to looping PDF like this. It's a private. You need to add your account. I already have my account, so you need to select your invoice template. We have this name is invoice, so select the invoice, the template ID, it's active, and now you need to provide the custom payload. So we already create our JSON. This is highlight area. We need to send this, and here is an important part too. We need to create a new column for the result, and once the column is created, you need to go change the name and also change the data type of this column to get the invoice in a PDF format. Okay, this invoice, you can use any buttons here, and good to go. So now we create everything from there, and when we press this button, it should generate our invoice here in the same template style. So let's press this button and see everything is work fine. It's get the error at 173. Let's resolve it first. Let's understand first. We missed something. Open JSON, the format. Okay, here we directly call the list of line items, and we need to call the JSON we created for it. Okay, and then when we have the list of JSON, we need to combine those lists. So we use join and combine all this with a comma. So now I think we are ready to do. So we get this big invoice, and now we need to send this invoice, send this. Now we need to press this button to create an invoice here in this same format. So let's create the invoice with this button and see if it's work. You can see here we have the invoice for this particular invoice, and see how it look. We get the invoice number, we get the date of issue, the client details, and here we get the total amount, and here is, you can see, we get the looping variables for the different services, service 1 and 2, for the same invoice, the quantity and all the values in the total amount. So that's how you can create your invoice directly from Coda. You can download it here, or you can use Google Gmail pick to send it directly to the client. I hope this video helps you. Thanks.